Over the past 100 years, the use of cars has radically altered our built environment. And nowhere is that more evident than in the American garage, which also happens to be my favorite room in the house. Although, is it even a room? In the age of she sheds, man caves, and car modding, I'd argue yes. I mean, what's not to love about the big, open, blank slate of a space that is the garage? To be interested in popular culture of America is to be interested in our popular architecture, because garages are not only an important part of our everyday environment, they also reveal in their design and their evolution much about our values and how we've adapted our domestic lives to our changing culture.
If there's one room in the house that epitomizes the American dream, it's the transitional space of the garage. My garage is used as a shop, where material comes in, it's transformed, and goes out into the world as something different and new. I, similarly, enter with the identity of my work or home life, but I leave as a builder, a designer, a creative. Garages transform based on their owners' interests, their responsibilities, their hopes, and their dreams. My first garage was at my parents' house, where I learned to glaze windows, work on cars, and organize our camping equipment. My current garage is kind of a mess because I have too many hobbies and no perfect storage system. On one side, I store camping gear, kayaks, and bikes, and the other side is a wood shop and home renovation command center. Nothing epitomizes suburban America quite like the garage. But how and why did the garage become such a staple in contemporary housing? I'm at the Seattle Downtown Public Library to try and find a couple books to show you some of the history of the garage. This is one of my favorite buildings in all of Seattle. Fun fact, it was the first library built in the country in the 21st century. So I always try to come down and visit as much as I can and soak up some of the architectural wonder here. Let's see what we can find. Garages find their roots in stables. The earliest garage was inspired by these structures, and people called them carriage houses, which were outbuildings near a larger home designed to store horse-drawn carriages. These were popular for the affluent in America in the 19th century, when roads became much more established. A carriage house was typically designed in the same style as the main home, and it sometimes housed the coachman or chauffeur on the upper floor. Carriage houses were typically hidden away at the end of a long driveway or behind a wall and kept separate from the house for sanitation reasons. This House Beautiful issue from 1906 shows off colonial, Tudor, and Craftsman garages built in the same style as the main home. Today, homeowners often repurpose old carriage houses and garages into small ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, used for guests, home offices, or rental income. Cars began replacing horse-drawn carriages during this time, but in 1899, only 1 in 1.5 million Americans owned a car, or 0.0000067%. That all changed in the 1920s with the advent of mass-produced cars like the Model T. The population became steadily less rural, and garages took a turn away from the aesthetically pleasing carriage houses and towards a more utilitarian design. As urban centers and public utilities grew, American garages could now be found lining service alleys or blatantly overtaking backyards. But when did garages get moved to the front of the house? That typical suburban look that we're all so familiar with. Enter Frank Lloyd Wright. It always comes down to Frank Lloyd Wright, doesn't it? Wright designed what might be the earliest example of a front-facing garage at the Roby House, which was completed in 1910. The Roby House has a 3-car garage connected to the home by a door and is one of the architect's original prairie-style homes. It's still standing today on the south side of Chicago if you want to go have a look at it. Frederick Roby, who the house was named after, was an entrepreneur, the son of a bicycle manufacturer, and his wife Laura had come across Wright's work in the same House Beautiful magazine I mentioned earlier, and she fell in love with his work. Wright and the Robies hit it off because they were all fans of the early automobiles. So for the Robie house, Wright did away with the stables and the front porches, which were popular at the time, and instead put a 3-car garage smack front and center. I also think it's fascinating that Wright removed much of the closet space from the house. This design move really foreshadowed the garage becoming a primary storage room. Historians now say that Wright's garage was ahead of its time and really paved the way for the reshaping of cities around cars and the expansion of the suburbs.
So Frank Lloyd Wright is in the background being all avant-garde and everything, but back in everyday America, soldiers were returning home from World War II en masse on the GI Bill, and they were ready to settle down. The government was subsidizing the construction of railroads and highways, and builders were designing planned communities where the soldiers could settle in with their families. But at the same time, home delivery services dwindled, which meant that houses had to have a washer, and a dryer, and a freezer, and an easy way to transport large loads of groceries and goods. Cars became kind of essential, and so of course did garages. At first, these rooms were designed for one purpose, storing and protecting automobiles. But we see throughout the 20th century that it's people living their everyday lives that are continually repurposing and redefining the garage. Okay, so I have a big project here. I want to try and put some new cabinetry throughout the whole garage here. I'm gonna get rid of all of this whole workbench here, and then maybe go find some used or recycled cabinets that I can just put into place. I built this shelf a couple months ago, and it's been very nice getting a little bit of organization in the garage, but this is still chaotic with tools everywhere and nowhere to put them. So let's get to work. Okay, here we are. I've demolished all of the old workbench. We have a nice clean blank slate, and here's a pile of all the stuff that I took out. I'm gonna load that up into the trailer in the morning and take it to the transfer station, and then hit up the reuse store and try and find some nice recycled cabinets.
If you're looking to make a home in Seattle, send me a message and we'll get started together. I run a small real estate team out of the Seattle area, and if you're looking for a referral closer to you, then I'm also connected to a lot of really great realtors around the country. Awesome, thank you. Good job.
Garages were designed to store vehicles, but they quickly became something more. Storage spaces, offices, rehearsal rooms, gyms, wood shops, entire companies were built in the garage, and entire genres of music were named after it. I think the theme of the 20th century is something like DIY, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, build it yourself in the back of your house. And I think it's this ethos that is represented in the rise of popularity of the garage. The garage is foundational to the mythos of Silicon Valley, where Hewlett-Packard developed audio oscillators for Disney's Fantasia, and the first Apple computer was built. garage rock transformed the music industry, no doubt rehearsed in Gwen Stefani's grandparents' garage. Seattle's full of examples of indie bands starting out in garages and making it big. Okay, yes, I do play the bass, but not quite that well. The garage without car has lost its prescribed use. It's become something new, something like a blank slate. It's a space in the house that can be used for something that isn't necessarily domestic. One could say that America was built in the garage. So I'm heading over to Second Use now, one of Seattle's best building reuse stores. I'm hoping to find a few cabinets for my garage instead of, buying something completely brand new. This one looks very cool, but I am hoping to keep the cost a little under $2,300. I'm trying to find a few base cabinets that add up to about 10 feet long and then 2 uppers that frame the window here. I ended up spending about $700 for 4 cabinets in total, which is a little bit more than I wanted to spend, but it's the best that I could do here. If you regularly do home reno projects and you don't have a truck, definitely get a trailer. I think this one cost about $800 at Lowe's, and I've had it a couple years, and it's been just amazing for buying sheets of plywood, picking up cabinets, and taking things to the demo. I used to rent a truck from Home Depot whenever I needed one, but this trailer has been just so much easier. It's kind of annoying to store, but it's very much worth it.
I only have time really right now to get these in place, and then you're gonna have to follow along on Instagram to see what the finished product looks like. I'm thinking that I'm gonna paint everything white. It'll just kind of make it a little bit more cohesive, be a cool little workbench for under $1,000. I don't think it'll be quite that much, but I do need a countertop, some lights, and yeah, some paint too. Let's see how it goes. It probably would have been a little bit more economical to build everything myself. For $700, I still have a fair amount of carpentry left to do on this. But it does save me a lot of time and most of the, all the really precise drawer making. So that's kind of nice. Let me show you how putting together the cabinets turned out. Part of loving your garage is making sure that it's optimized and ready to work. So here's the beginning steps. I still have to probably put a plywood kicker plate there that makes it a little bit more cohesive. I'm gonna build cubbies so that this is level and I can put a countertop on the surface. And then probably cut off a couple extra bits to make it a little bit more seamless. I had to pull this away from the wall because this is like a vanity cabinet and this is a kitchen cabinet, but I'm gonna try and secure everything so that it turns out nice. We're visiting my dad for Christmas, which got me thinking about my first garage here at my childhood home in Bellingham. This is the house that I grew up in. It was built in 1901, and 35 years ago when we moved in, my parents had to build a bathroom on the ground floor because the only existing bathroom was outside in the backyard in a water closet. I remember in the spring that we would pull off all of the storm windows because they were old wood windows, and then it was my job to reglaze them, refinish them, and then store them up in the garage attic. We would chop wood out here to keep warm in the winter. Whatever the house required, this is where it happened, in the garage. Okay, that makes it sound like we're in the woods, an early settler, but really we're just in urban Bellingham. It's just an old house.
This is a cardboard model of my house. I've lived in other houses and apartments, but this is the first one as an adult that has felt like home. Anyways, it's also a good illustration of the mid-century garage. Remember, it was the post-war boom and everyone buying cars that caused a radical shift in garage design. Instead of garages being in the back of the home off of an alley, look at how they're now on the front, creating this kind of monolithic wall to the neighborhood. We see this a lot where I live in Shoreline, a neighborhood just north of Seattle that was developed in the 50s. As America becomes more and more unwalkable, you can now drive up to your house, pull into the garage, shut the door, and never have to talk to any of your neighbors. I think whoever built my 1960s house did a decent job of trying to prevent this stonewalling by putting a path up to the front door. There's a nice porch up here, and situating the whole house on a cul-de-sac. But you know, mid-century design tries very hard to situate the living space of the house off of the back, focusing on the inside, the family life, instead of the neighboring community outside. Okay, so check this out. Neighbor on one side operates a print shop out of their garage. Neighbor on the other side has a classic car collection in their garage. These guys over here use the garage, the space above their garage, to build an ADU. So a lot of the research in this video came from a book. I'm just pulling it up here, Garage by Olivia Erlanger and Luis Ortega Govella. So if you like some of these thoughts, go buy the book, support them, check it out. And send me a message, contact info below, or just stay tuned for more design and housing content from my home in Seattle. Bye.